Welcome back, everybody. Diamond Chaplain here, going through Philippians, the book of encouragement. We're starting Philippians 2, verses 1 through 18. The very first thing I noticed in this chapter, and you probably will too, is he starts off with the word if. He says, but if here is not a question, it's a statement. Don't think of it as if, but think of it as an if-then statement. It could have probably used the word because. Because you are a Christian, then this should be evident in your life. Okay, so that's something that we all need to grasp, is we call ourselves Christians. So if we call ourselves Christians, we call ourselves followers of Christ, then there should be fruit that is evident of that. If we're calling us the Christian tree, then we should have fruit that bears that. An oak tree bears acorns. An apple tree bears apples. A Christian tree should bear little Christs. So that's why we have the word if right there. Verse 2 is we should all have one mind and one purpose. Not saying we all think alike, not saying we're all going to agree, but we should always be striving for the same common purpose. And that purpose is to show the love of Christ, to show his grace, his mercy, and to give the world hope. Verses 3 and 4, we show the love of Christ by looking out for one another. In other words, none of us want to be alone. We all want somebody who walks beside us. That's what verses 3 and 4 are saying. If you're a Christian, then you should be loving one another. And the best way to love one another is to help them through life, is to just be there for them. Verse 5 is setting up the next 5 verses. He's defining what our one mind would look like. Verse 6, this is such a beautiful verse here because it actually takes us all the way back to Genesis, all the way back to the beginning. In the book of Genesis, in Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, they were tempted to be like God. And that's what tempts every single one of us every day, is that we want to be God of our own kingdom. The example that Christ gives us is that we shouldn't seek to be like God. We should seek to obey God, to be his servant, to let him use us according to his will, not try to promote ourselves. We should be promoting him and his love and his righteousness. We see that in verses 7 and 8. We see the picture of Christ as a humble servant. There was nothing that he wouldn't do to give honor and glory to his Father. Verses 9 and 11 shows that the reward that was given to Christ, because he was a humble servant, because he came and did not seek to be God, he will be elevated to a position where at one time, at the day of judgment, every knee will bow to him and every tongue will confess that he is the Son of God. Verses 12 and 13 show us that obedience to God requires work. It's not easy. It's not natural. It's not something that we wake up in the morning going, I'm going to obey God today. No, we have to work at it. But the beautiful thing is it's not our work. It's God working through us. So yes, to be obedient to God requires allowing God to work through us and not us trying to do it on our own. That's encouraging in itself, is knowing that we don't have to do it on our own, in our own strength. Verse 14 can certainly be summed up just like this. Stop complaining about everything. That's exactly what verse 14 is talking about. Don't grumble. Don't complain. Why? Verse 15, because everybody complains. And when we do not complain, when we stop complaining, people notice, hey, wait a minute, they're not complaining about their situation. Why not? Then we get to shine as lights. That's when we get to show the world that Christ is real, that his love is real, his grace is real, his mercy is real. And we don't have to complain because we know he's already in charge. He's in control. He's sovereign. Okay? And because we're not complaining, then people are drawn to us and they say, hey, why aren't they complaining? Everybody else around me is complaining, but this person who calls themselves a Christian, they're not complaining. How come they're not complaining? They're not complaining about the president. They're not. And then verse 18 sums up everything that's been talked about in this entire chapter. Everything that has been talked about in the previous 17 verses talks about obedience and talks about being humble and talks about being a servant. It's all sacrifice. But that sacrifice is where the joy comes from. The joy of God, the joy of Jesus, the joy of our salvation. That's where we are. We'll finish out the chapter next week. Until then, happy Thanksgiving.